So, in about 2012, my then boyfriend lived in Sweden. I live in Canada. He came to visit me, and during one of the evenings, I woke up to something strange perched at the foot of the bed. It was a pale, thin humanoid figure. It was completely hairless, and the legs seemed to be bowed in some way. It seemed to walk on all fours, despite looking human. I couldn't see much of its face since it was looking away from me. It looked a lot like the creature from the fictional story, The Rake. When I gasped, it hopped off the bed and into the darkness. My partner heard me and woke to ask me what was wrong. I didn't tell him as to not alarm him while trying to rest. In 2014, he was visiting once more, and we were once again in bed sleeping. I woke up to hear my boyfriend screaming like I've never heard before. I immediately turned on the light and shook him to try and snap him out of it, but he just screamed and then cried. After 30 or so minutes, he finally was calm enough to explain what had happened. Apparently, he woke up to a pale humanoid figure with a gaping mouth and black sunken eyes, basically on top of him. As he screamed, the figure slowly backed itself into the closet, whole, staring at him, crawling on all fours. I felt sick. I never ever told him about what I saw a few years prior. There's no way he could have known and described what I saw perfectly like that. Now, here's why I'm telling you this. It's shown up again. My ex messaged me today, since we're still friends, and told me his now girlfriend has seen the pale man. They were asleep, and apparently, she woke up to see this thing stalking around the room, and it noticed her, frozen in fear, so it crawled up next to her. My ex woke up and tried to console her. She described what she saw. It apparently was perfect exact match to the thing we both saw. I only ever told him what I saw after his experience, and she has never ever heard of either of our experiences. Is this just a mass coincidence of hallucination? Or is this a demon or some sort of haunting? A skinwalker? A crawler? I'm really freaked out. Names and details leading up to this encounter aren't very important, so I'll just set the scene. Two 14-year-old girls go on an isolated Kentucky mountaintop a few hours after I flipped the ATV, injuring my friend's leg. I had tried to act quickly, but I was too weak to get the ATV upright by myself. Once the both of us lifted it, we promptly flooded the engine. A woman of action, I helped my friend up, put it in neutral, and decided to push the ATV down the mountain, with my friend occasionally tapping the brake. Suddenly, she halts our progress and asks me to jump on the back. In front of us was a monster of a snake. It was the fattest, angriest hog snake I've ever seen, right across our path, blocking us. By this time, it was almost dusk. Because the snake was easily the size of my arm, we decided to just stare it down, waiting on for it to crawl. Finally, I could push again, though I wasn't thrilled about walking next to this lazy flat goblin. I didn't have a long way to go, and we'd be able to coast on down, or maybe my parents would come searching for us. There was still plenty of light, but the sky was pink from sunset. Simultaneously, our heads snapped to look behind us. I'm not entirely sure why we even looked. There wasn't a sound, no twig snap. It had to be something instinctual, because we both looked back at the tree-lined path that we'd slowly come through. Every hair that I owned raised. My blood ran cold in an instant. I spared one quick glance at my friend, mostly because I hadn't seen it yet. She had. She was completely frozen, and I followed her gaze to about 15 feet behind me. There sat this creature, hunched over, boneless, yet with some humanoid form. It was skin, pale white skin. At first, I thought that's all it was, like Buffalo Bill or Gollum. Then barely a second after that panicked observation, I noticed its face, its eyes. They were so deeply set that I at first was terrified of the glance. I thought they were only empty black pits. The setting sun struck them just enough that I could see the refraction. Its nose was flatter than Voldemort's. This hunched, naked, pale creature was studying me just the same. Its lips were pale, pink, and trembling. A horrifying thought informed me that this gaunt creature was famished, starving, hungry. As if it heard my inner dialogue, it raised its skin-wrapped, skeletal hand to silence me. Then, it waved its claws one finger at a time. I wished that I had counted them, but I was trying desperately not to piss myself. Then, the sweetest sound that I'd ever heard. The ATV started. My friend, the angel, must have turned away long enough to try it, so I risked it as well. I leapt onto the back of the ATV, sobbing, and wrapped my arms around my buddy so tightly. That's probably the reason for her cracked rib, and not the accident. When I glanced back, it was gone. Halfway down the mountain, we ran into my parents. It was pitch black. We survived, and talked about it later at the hospital. Turns out, she didn't even know how to start the ATV. It wasn't her. It's been a few years since this happened. I haven't been back on the mountain. I'm still friends with her, and we've talked about it a few times. We've theorized various possibilities as to what it could have been, but we can't agree. I've tried to find similar encounters, even in mythology. Finally, I'm here. I'm sure that I've not explained it very well, but I did my best to try. Do you have any ideas about what it is? Did it want to eat me or help us? We both saw it, so at least I know I'm not crazy. I remember these experiences I had as a 5 to 6-year-old. I usually slept in my own room before I became a paranoid child. I had a twin-sized bed in my old house. The door to my room was about 10 feet to my left of the bed. Between the ages of 5 and 6, maybe 7, I had numerous experiences with 2 different, I don't know what to say, ghosts? Demons? I really don't know. It started after what I thought was just a disturbingly vivid reoccurring dream. I'm a lucid dreamer, and when I was little, I could wake up by screaming, and this might sound funny, but when I did, a skeleton head would reappear out of nowhere and shake me until I woke up. It went like this. It would be either late evening or midnight, and the fish nightlight I had would be a little dimmer than usual. I was always freezing cold, but not winter cold. Like the cold you get when you're playing frisbee on a cool summer day. A chilly arm cold. I would always hear a creepy hum, like 10 seconds before she showed up. A lady, a tall, thin, hunched-over lady wearing a dress in a color I couldn't identify, would open the door. And her hair, it would be covering her face. She would walk around for a bit, and I would just sit, like literally frozen in fear. Anytime I would try and scream, nothing came out, and she would notice and jump at me. I would always wake up in a cold sweat. That kept happening for about a year. It slowed down after 6 months because of one occurrence. It was like an out-of-body experience, but with ghosts. I would start in my parents' room and float over down the hallway to my room. I would float up until I was right above my bed, and I saw a shadow of a man, like he was made of nothing, like 8 foot, and his arms went down to his knees. He was almost twig thin, and he was bald. He was looking down at my body, like he was checking to see if I was okay, and he stiffened up after a few seconds and slowly looked up at me where I was, and he had no face. After that, I woke up. When I was like 9, a few months before we moved, my dad told me he met a woman who knocked on our door for no reason. She told him 2 people died in our house. One, a man who had had a heart attack, and a woman who fell down the stairs and broke her neck. I can't make this up. Now I'm in the 8th grade. I need answers as to what this could be. If a crawler like mimicked their bodies or they possessed them. I don't really know. Okay, I want to preface this by saying I have had a lot of stuff happen to me on my grandparents' land. It's 75 acres of horror, and if you're not used to it, I grew up a lot, so this didn't faze me too much. So if my reactions are odd, it's because this is my life, and I'm kind of desensitized. No, this is not the only thing to chase after me in my car, but this one was different. Anyway, okay, I was 17 years old, driving from my dad's house on the before-mentioned land. Pretty late. I think it was around 11 or so. I had dropped somebody off at my dad's house and was driving back into town to get to my mom's place. As I was driving down our long driveway, I kept seeing things move in the field. I didn't pay any attention. Probably a rabbit or something. Things moving in the grass is normal. I get out to the road, and I see something or someone in the ditch, just lying there. Me being a girl in a raggedy old car, at a place with piss poor signal, in the middle of the night with no weapons on me, I floor it. I don't care. I figured I could call my dad later to take care of the possible drunk in the ditch. I'm driving down the road, memory of the ditch person creeping me out, and I get this awful feeling of being watched. I'm traveling down this road at nearly 60 miles an hour, no signal whatsoever. Maybe I'm just overreacting. Whatever. I still speed up because I want to get signal to call my boyfriend, because it would make me feel safer. Then I see something running alongside my car. Well, I say running. It was more skittering. Lanky limbs, on all fours, running and keeping up with me, going 60 plus miles an hour down a country logging highway. I think my brain kind of had an aneurysm at this point, because I'm just repeating myself, what? I'm getting closer to civilization though, so I floor it, getting up to 80 miles an hour and leaving it behind. I call my boyfriend, freaking out about what I saw. I pulled over at a little church with the light out front, trying to logic it all out, when I see the thing again. It's on the road, skittering towards my parked car. Before I have time to pull out, it's on me, hitting my car hard enough to dent the rear bumper. I scream, squealing out of the lot, and driving like a maniac towards town. I get into town and circle around the main areas a few times, calming down before I go to my mom's. Further description of the thing. It was weirdly flat, like someone trying to do a back bend, but not bending. Its limbs were long and spindly, with pale skin stretched too tight across its bones.